Hi there, YouTube. I just wanted to make a sort of quick and dirty video about choosing your first film camera. And there's a lot of information out there, and you can Google this very easily and get all kinds of recommendations. But I think the problem is this, there's just too much information. So I'm going to just go through a couple of different camera types and show a couple of my meager collection of film cameras. And then I'm going to give you my personal recommendation for the best camera for people that want to get into film photography. And I'll back it up with some reasons. And if those reasons make sense to you personally, then maybe that would work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, if you've got other ideas, that's great too, because it's a very personal thing. Anyway, so I'm just going to start with the most basic kind of camera that you can get, which is the compact camera. Now, modern compacts have autofocus, auto exposure, sort of auto everything, auto wind, all that kind of stuff. My personal favorite compact camera is the Lomo LCA, and it doesn't have any of those features. It's basically a manual wind with this little thumb wheel. It's manual exposure using zones, and then the manual focus using zones, and then the camera itself does the exposure. It's completely automatic exposure with not really any exposure compensation or overrides or anything like that. So all you need to do is select the right focus zone and press the button, and Bob's your uncle. And that's why I love it, and I get great results with this camera, and it's a small little camera that fits into your pocket. Another scale focusing or zone focusing camera that's very popular and tiny is the Minox. And again, when you close it, it's the tiniest little thing. It's truly a pocket camera. So that's another one that you could think of or consider. Like I said, there's many autofocus compacts out there, and they're very easy to use if that's what you want. They're very easy to just throw in a bag or whatever. And you don't really have to think about photography too much. You can just have fun with it. The flip side is there's no control over anything, and you're stuck with one lens usually. Sometimes a zoom, but the zooms are pretty crappy, I think. I don't really like them. So that's one option if you want just a very user-friendly, easy experience. The other kind of camera that you hear a lot about when you go down the analog rabbit hole on the internet is the rangefinder. Of course, the gold standard for rangefinder is Leica, and they're very expensive, but you can get cheaper options like the Canonet. And there's many of these style cameras around, from Canon and Yashica, Electro, things like that. There's many different models around if you want a fixed lens rangefinder. They work really well. The problem with rangefinders, though, if you're not used to using them, is you can't really see exactly what the lens sees. You look through a viewfinder and then you take the picture. So the framing can be a little bit off if you're very close to the subject. And also you can't see depth of field or anything like that. But rangefinders are great because they're quite compact and their shutters are really quiet and they're really cool cameras. I mean, this is a very cool looking camera. So rangefinder is an option, but it wouldn't be my recommendation. Okay. So the next kind of camera that's had a lot of press in the last few years for film is kind of the Lomography toy camera. And these are so much fun and they're cheap. This is called a Mini Diana. It takes 35mm film. And, I've had fun with it. The other cult plastic camera that you might have heard of is the Holga. And this is a great camera. I really like my Holga. And you can take really great pictures with it. Conversely, the thing with Holgas and toy cameras is the lenses are very soft. They're made out of plastic and they get a lot of softness around the edges, a lot of blurriness, things like that. And if that's what you want that kind of dreamy, ethereal look, then it might be a camera for you. But if you think you could just grab one of these cameras and throw film in it and just walk around and snap away and get good pictures, that's not how they work, because they literally do not have any real way to adjust exposure. you only have 2 apertures, which are really close together, and 1 shutter speed. So you can't really change the exposure very much. And that means you have to match the film speed to the lighting conditions. And if you go out of those lighting conditions into shade or something like that, or a darker room, there's nothing you can do. You're just going to end up with really terrible underexposed shots. And I think a lot of people that buy these cameras sort of go out there and just shoot away like crazy, and about 10% of the shots actually look good and the rest are kind of just throw away. So they're fun, but they have a lot of limitations. They're also cheap, but I like them. They are fun. You just need to know how to use them. Another type of camera that gets a lot of press in the film photography circles is the TLR, or the twin lens reflex. And as you can see, it's a truly beautiful camera. This one's a Yashica C. The famous models are from Rolleiflex and can be very expensive. And they're really good cameras. They're awesome. I love shooting with this. But again, you have to have a bit of knowledge and skill and experience to use it properly. There's no light meter in here. So if you're going to use it, you can either guesstimate the exposure with Sunny 16, and I recommend that you check out what Sunny 16 is and see what it's all about, because it's actually a good way to guesstimate exposure. Or you're going to have to use a light meter like this. And while that's a lot of fun and I enjoy doing that, I've been using film cameras for about 35 to 40 years, and I know how to do it. For somebody coming into film, the learning curve would be pretty steep and it would take a while to feel comfortable with it. So, maybe leave something like this, the medium format, or a TLR, or a Hasselblad or something like that. Maybe leave that for down the line to see if you actually like film photography. Okay, so you've seen the rest, now see the best. This is the camera, the type of camera that I recommend. And there's many different models and many different styles, and there's lots to choose from. But basically, the SLR. This is kind of the camera that you've seen around a lot. They became huge in the 60s, and they're still relevant today. There's digital SLRs around. That's, a professional camera basically is a digital SLR these days, as well as mirrorless. But what these cameras excel at is the fact that they can do almost anything. You can change the lenses. This one's got a wide angle 28 on it right now, but the usual lens I would use is a 50mm, which is a highly, highly versatile lens. It's fast, and which means it lets in a lot of light, and you can control the focusing very, very carefully. The big deal with SLRs is the fact that when you look through the viewfinder, you're looking through the lens, and you're seeing exactly what the lens sees, or pretty close to exact. That means you can see the depth of field, or how much of your scene is in focus. So if you want very, very shallow depth of field to take a portrait, and you want all the background to be blurry, you can see that, and you can do that. And you can adjust your aperture and make it really wide and have a shallow depth of field. Also, if you're doing a landscape, you want the opposite. You might want as much depth of field as you can possibly get, and therefore you have a small aperture. And you can see that through the viewfinder when you use the lever on the side, or the button, which shuts down the aperture and shows you exactly what the aperture is doing. These cameras also have a built-in meter which averages the scene and will give you a very good idea of how to expose the shot. This particular model, the Canon TX, is fully manual. There's no automatic features whatsoever. You just go by what the meter says, and you dial in the aperture on the lens, and you put in the shutter speed. Therefore, you're controlling the picture you make. You're in full control. And also, you're learning all about photography. You're learning the most important aspects of photography, which are how to control depth of field, motion blur, how to freeze something, how to have intentional blur if you want that kind of thing. The control is what's going to teach you about photography and give you that creative control as well. Okay. The other great thing about SLRs is they're really quite cheap. You can pick up many models for anything from about $50 to about $100, $150. Some of the high-end models are going to cost more, but you'd be surprised at what you could get for just a few dollars. And the lenses tend to be really good. I also have this Pentax Spotmatic, and the lenses are called Takumar, and they're excellent. This one in particular is a 51.4, and it's kind of famous for being awesome. And again, this camera is fully manual. You can get cameras that are more advanced and have some automatic exposure, like the Canon AE1, like the Minolta X700. There's many cameras with manual focus lenses that have auto exposure options, and that would probably be one of my best recommendations. So if you're not sure what to do, just put it on auto. As long as you're in focus, you just press the button. And focusing right through the lens, you can see what's in focus and what isn't, and it's very intuitive. So just to save you a lot of time and heartache, one of the most important things you need to consider when you buy a used film camera is to make sure that it works. Now, if you go to a dealer, you might pay a little bit more, but they're not going to sell you a lemon. They're going to sell you something that's going to work. And the meter is going to be accurate, most probably, and everything's going to be just fine. If you go to a private sale, you can get a bargain. You can get some really good deals, but you're not always sure it's going to work until you test it. And even if the person believes it works, it doesn't mean that it will, because it might have been sitting in a box for 20 years. So just, be careful when you're buying on the used market. And if you buy from somebody who seems like a good person and is also very knowledgeable, and everything they tell you seems to check out, then there's a good chance you're going to get something good. But if you pick something up from somebody who doesn't really know what they're talking about, you could be buying a lemon. So just be aware of that. Like I said, going to a dealer is the best way to make sure that your money is well spent and you're going to get a good working camera. Okay, so that's my personal opinion about buying a used film camera. 35mm is the most versatile format, and you're going to get the most bang for the buck in terms of the cost of each frame. Medium format is also cool, but it's a bit more expensive per frame. It's about 3 times the price. And 35mm cameras are just way easier to use in general terms. So that's my recommendation. If you disagree or you got any recommendations of your own, please put some comments in the comment section below, and have yourself a good day.